Ethan lived a quiet life in the city. He worked as an engineer, fixing machines in the factory during the day, and returning home at night to his small apartment. His life was simple, almost the same every day. He never expected anything unusual to happen, but fate had other plans for him. One evening, after a long shift, Ethan decided to take a shower to wash away the dirt and sweat of the day. He turned on the hot water, steam filled the bathroom, and he stepped inside to relax. As he closed his eyes, something strange happened. A sudden flash of light cut through the mist. The air seemed to bend, and before he could react, someone appeared right in front of him. It was a young woman. She looked nothing like anyone he had ever seen in the city. Her hair was long and silver, flowing down her shoulders. Her eyes were bright blue and sharp, almost as if they could see through him. She wore a gown that seemed out of place in his plain apartment, glowing slightly in the light. Ethan froze, unsure if he was dreaming. His heart pounded in his chest, and he tried to make sense of what had just happened. The woman looked him over carefully, her gaze steady and confident. A small smirk crossed her lips, as though she knew exactly how shocked he was. Ethan opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He could not even think of what to ask. Who was she? How did she appear in a shower? None of it made sense. Instead of leaving or explaining, the woman stayed. She moved slowly, looking around the small bathroom, then turning her eyes back to him. Her calmness only added to Ethan's confusion. He felt exposed, not only because of the shower, but because her eyes seemed to reach into his thoughts. For a moment, the world outside the bathroom disappeared. There was only her standing close, smirking as if she had planned this. Ethan's first instinct was to panic, but something in her presence stopped him. She did not seem dangerous. There was no fear in her expression, no sign that she was here to harm him. She looked more curious than anything else. Ethan finally managed to find his voice and asked, "Who are you?" His voice trembled, but he forced the words out. The woman did not answer right away. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, studying him like he was the stranger. Then, in a calm voice, she said, "My name is Liana," spoke with a tone of certainty, like someone used to giving orders. Ethan could tell right away that she was no ordinary person. The way she carried herself, the way she held his eyes without looking away, it all told him she had power. Not the kind of power from money or machines, but the kind that came from within. Ethan took a step back, pressing his hand against the cold wall. His mind raced. None of this was possible. People did not appear out of thin air, yet here she was, as real as the steam in the room. "How did you get here?" he asked, his voice still shaky. Liana's smirk faded into a faint smile. "I was transported," she said simply, as if that explained everything. Ethan blinked, not sure if he heard her correctly. Transported. That word did not belong in his world. His life was built on wires, gears, and machines. Nothing about transportation through light and air made sense. Still, she spoke as if it was nothing unusual. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The sound of water falling filled the silence. Ethan could not decide if he should run, shout, or stay still, but the woman's calm presence made him do the last. He stayed, his eyes fixed on hers, waiting for her to say more. Deep down, a strange thought crept into his mind. Maybe his life was no longer going to be ordinary. Maybe this woman had come for a reason. Liana finally broke the silence again.
"I won't tear that text."
"You are not afraid," she said, almost as if it surprised her. Ethan gave a short laugh, though it was nervous. "I am afraid," he said honestly, "but I also know I can't make you vanish. So I have to stand here." Her smile grew wider, and she nodded slightly. "Good," she said softly. "That means you are stronger than most." Ethan did not understand what she meant, but he felt the weight of her words. It was as if she saw something in him that he had never noticed himself. That night, everything Ethan believed about his life began to change. The woman who appeared in his shower did not leave. She stayed, and with her presence, the world around Ethan started to feel larger, more dangerous, and more alive than ever before. Ethan woke up the next morning with the memory of the night still sharp in his mind. He sat up in bed, half expecting to find the room empty, but she was still there. Liana was standing near the window, looking out at the city below. The early sunlight touched her silver hair, making it glow softly. Ethan rubbed his eyes, wondering if it was still a dream, but the sight of her calm figure told him it was all real. He cleared his throat and asked, "Are you really still here?" His voice carried both confusion and disbelief. Liana turned slowly, her eyes meeting his. She nodded once, without a word, as if the question itself was unnecessary. Ethan swung his legs out of bed and stood, trying to gather his thoughts. "I don't understand any of this," he said. "You appeared in my shower? You said you were transported. Why me? Why here?" Liana walked closer, her movements graceful, almost regal. "It was not meant to be this way," she replied. "The device was supposed to take me to safety. Instead, it brought me here to you." Her words only left him with more questions, but her tone carried weight. She was not making up stories. Ethan could see in her eyes that she was telling the truth. "So you didn't choose me?" he said quietly. "This was an accident." Liana paused for a moment before answering. "Perhaps it was an accident," she said. "I believe there is a reason I am here, even if I cannot see it yet." Ethan felt a strange chill at her words. He'd never thought of life in that way. To him, things just happened because of luck or mistake. But the way she spoke made it sound as though destiny had a hand in it. He shook the thought away and tried to stay practical. "Well, if you plan on staying here, people will notice. This is not a palace. It's just a small apartment. I barely have enough space for myself." Liana smiled faintly, the kind of smile that seemed to hide 1,000 thoughts. "I have lived in halls filled with voices, gold and power," she said. "But none of those halls gave me peace. Here there is silence. It is different, but not unpleasant." Ethan blinked, unsure how to respond. She spoke as though she came from a world far above his own. The way she stood, the way she carried herself, everything about her hinted at authority. Yet she stood here in his simple home without complaint. They sat at his small table for breakfast. Ethan made coffee and toasted bread, the only things he had left in his kitchen. Liana looked at the food with curiosity, then tasted it carefully. "Plain," she said at last, but there was no insult in her voice. Ethan laughed awkwardly. "It's not much, but it's all I can offer." For a moment, there was silence between them. Then Liana leaned forward slightly. "You should know the truth," she said. "I am not just someone who appeared by mistake. I am the queen of a land far from here. I was hunted by those who wished for war. My people wanted peace, but others refused it. They sent men to destroy me, and when the device failed, I was cast into your world instead." Ethan stared at her, stunned by her confession. "A queen?" he asked slowly. He tried to imagine her in a crown, sitting on a throne, giving orders to armies. It seemed unreal, yet when he looked at her steady eyes and heard the calm strength in her voice, he could believe it. "Why tell me this?" he asked. "Why trust me?" Liana's gaze did not waver. "Because I have no choice. Because I see something in you. You do not turn away. You do not bow. But you do not push me aside either. That makes you different." Ethan swallowed hard. He was just an engineer, an ordinary man. What could she possibly see in him? Yet there was no doubt in her eyes, and that unsettled him more than her sudden appearance had. The day passed slowly. Ethan tried to go about his normal tasks, but the presence of a queen in his apartment made everything feel different. She moved quietly, studying the world around her, asking simple questions about things he had always taken for granted: light switches, water taps, even the hum of the refrigerator. Her curiosity reminded him that she truly was from another place, even though she was human like him. That night, as they sat in silence again, Ethan realized something. His life had always been plain and predictable. But now, with Liana sitting across from him, nothing felt plain anymore. The quiet world he had known was gone, and a new one had taken its place. He had no idea what tomorrow would bring, but he knew it would not be ordinary. Ethan woke up the next day with a heavy feeling in his chest. He had gone to bed late, still thinking about what Liana had told him. The queen in his apartment was something he could not explain to himself, yet she was real. He found her sitting on the floor in the living room, reading through an old book he had left there. Her silver hair caught the light from the window, and for a moment he just watched her quietly. When she noticed him, she closed the book and looked at him with calm eyes. "You did not sleep well," she said. Ethan gave a small nod. "I kept thinking about what you told me, about the men who wanted to destroy you." Liana leaned back against the wall, her expression steady. "They are not men who give up easily. If they know the device failed, they will search. They will not stop until they find me. But that means you are now in danger as well. Ethan's stomach tightened. He had never been a part of anything larger than his factory job. The idea that people from another land, people with power and weapons, might come after him was too much to take in. I am just one person, he said. I don't even know how to fight. What can I possibly do? Liana's voice was calm but firm. You can stand. That is more than many with armies choose to do. I need no soldier at my side, only someone who does not run. Her words struck him, and for a moment he could not reply. He wanted to believe her, but fear was already growing inside him. He walked to the kitchen and poured water into a glass, his hands shaking slightly. If what you say is true, they could already be looking for you. For us, as if her words had called it into being, Ethan soon noticed something strange later that day. When he stepped outside to get groceries, he saw two men standing across the street. They wore plain clothes, but their eyes moved too sharply, too carefully. They were not ordinary passers-by. They watched his building closely, and when Ethan looked at them for too long, they turned away. He returned upstairs quickly, his mind racing. Liana, he said, when he closed the door behind him, I think someone is already here. She rose to her feet, her eyes narrowing. Describe them, Ethan told her about the two men, and she listened with quiet focus. They are scouts, she said at last. They will wait and they will watch. Soon, more will come. Ethan sat down hard on the couch, his chest tight. Then we need to run, he said. But Liana shook her head. Running will not help. They will track the energy that brought me here. Wherever I go, they will follow. The only choice is to face them when the time comes. Her certainty unsettled him, but he could not deny the truth in her words. He tried to think of ways to hide her, but every plan sounded foolish. She seemed to sense his thoughts and placed a hand on his arm. You are afraid, she said softly. That is natural. But fear does not make you weak. It shows that you understand the risk. And still, you have not told me to leave. Ethan looked into her steady blue eyes. If I told you to leave, you would not listen, he said with a small smile. Liana allowed herself the faintest smile in return. That is true, she admitted. The day grew long, and Ethan felt the weight of every passing hour. He found himself checking the window again and again, but the two men were gone. That made him even more uneasy. He kept waiting for a knock at the door or for shadows to move in the hallway. Every sound made him tense. As night fell, he and Liana sat in the dim light of the apartment. Neither spoke much, but the silence between them carried meaning. Ethan realized that his life was no longer his own. He was tied to her now, to her fight, whether he wanted it or not. Finally, Liana spoke again. When they come, you must not doubt yourself. You are stronger than you think. Ethan shook his head. I don't feel strong. I feel like a man who is in way over his head. She studied him with that same unshakable calm.
Strength is not about what you feel. It is about what you do when the choice is before you.
Ethan did not answer. Her words settled deep inside him, heavy but true. He knew then that the quiet life he had once lived was gone forever. Danger was already closing in, and soon he would have to decide who he really was. Ethan barely slept that night. Every sound outside made him think someone was at the door. Liana sat calmly in the living room, her posture straight and her eyes sharp, as if she had been trained to watch through the silence. Ethan admired how steady she remained, but the calm in her face only made him realize how unprepared he was. He was just a man with no weapon, no plan, and no experience. Still, he was here, and he could not walk away. In the morning, Ethan tried to go to work, but he could not focus. The factory machines roared around him, yet his mind was somewhere else. He kept thinking about Liana and the danger she carried with her. At the end of his shift, he rushed back to the apartment. When he opened the door, Liana was standing near the kitchen with a knife in her hand. She set it down as soon as she saw him. I heard movement in the hallway, she explained, but it passed. Her words made Ethan's stomach twist. They were being watched. He knew it. He sat at the table and buried his face in his hands. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. I don't know how to protect you. Liana walked over and stood in front of him. You were already doing it, she said. You did not tell me to leave. You gave me a place to stay when I had nothing, as more protection than most men would give." Her voice carried such certainty that Ethan found strength in it. He lifted his head and looked at her. She did not seem afraid, even though her life was on the line. If she could stay calm, then so could he. He nodded slowly. "Then we faced this together." The following days grew tense. Ethan noticed shadows near the street at night. Sometimes, when he walked to the store, he felt eyes on his back. Once, he even caught a glimpse of the same two men he had seen earlier. They were following him, always staying far enough to avoid being confronted. Ethan told Liana, and she only confirmed what he already feared. "They are waiting for the right moment," she said. One night, the moment came. Ethan had just finished locking the windows when a sharp knock came at the door. He froze. Liana stood behind him, silent but ready. The knock came again, harder this time. Ethan whispered, "Do we open it?" Liana shook her head. "No, they will not ask politely." The third knock was not a knock at all, it was a heavy crash. The door shook on its hinges, and Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. Without thinking, he grabbed the same kitchen knife Liana had used before. His hands shook, but he stood his ground. Liana placed a hand on his shoulder. "Stay behind me," she said firmly. The door burst open. Two men stepped inside, their faces hard and cold. They carried no guns, but their movements were sharp, practiced. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. Liana stepped forward, her eyes locked on them. She spoke with a voice that carried command. "Will not take me," she declared. The men smirked as if her words were nothing. One moved toward her, but Ethan, without thinking, stepped in his way. He raised the knife, his grip tight, and shouted, "Stop." His voice cracked, but it was filled with something he had never felt before: resolve. The man paused, surprised by the defiance of an ordinary engineer. In that second of hesitation, Liana moved. She struck quickly, not with a weapon, but with precision. She pushed the first man back and kicked the second aside. Ethan stood frozen, watching her fight with speed and control. Yet when one of the men tried to rise again, Ethan did not run. He charged forward and knocked him down, the knife shaking in his hand but steady enough to make the man stay down. When it was over, the two men lay groaning on the floor. Liana looked at Ethan with approval. "He stood," she said simply. Ethan's chest heaved as he tried to catch his breath. His whole body shook, but he was still standing. They tied the men with rope Ethan had in the closet, then left them for the authorities to find. Liana sat beside Ethan afterward, her expression softer than before. "You are braver than you know," she told him. "I have seen men with armor and swords turn away from less. But you did not." Ethan looked at her, his voice low. "Thought I would be too afraid to move. But you moved," she said, "and that is all that matters." For the first time, Ethan felt like he was more than just an ordinary man. He had faced fear and had not broken. Sitting beside Liana, he realized that their bond was no longer just chance. They were bound together now, and nothing could change that. The city felt different after that night. Ethan could no longer walk the streets without looking over his shoulder. The two men who had broken into his apartment were taken away by the authorities, but he knew others would follow. Liana knew it too. She did not speak of fear, but her eyes carried a weight that had not been there before. She had faced threats all her life, but now Ethan was part of it, and that changed everything. Ethan spent his days working as usual, but his thoughts never left the apartment. He hurried home every evening, worried that something might happen while he was away. Each time he opened the door and found Liana safe, he let out a breath of relief, yet he also knew the peace would not last. One evening, as the sun set behind the city, Liana stood at the window, watching the streets below. Ethan joined her, and for a while they both stayed silent. Finally, she spoke. "The time will come soon," she said quietly. "They will come in greater numbers. They will not stop until I am gone." Ethan swallowed hard. "Then we fight," he said. His voice shook, but he meant every word. Could not imagine letting her face it alone. Liana turned to him, her expression softening for the first time. "You would stand with me, even if it costs you everything?" Ethan nodded. "You didn't choose to be here, but you are here now, and I can't turn away from that. I won't." Her eyes lingered on his, and for the first time she let herself smile without the smirk that often masked her feelings. "Then I am not alone," she whispered. The night of the final attack came sooner than either of them expected. Ethan was woken by the sound of glass breaking. He jumped from his bed and rushed into the living room. The window had been shattered, and shadows moved inside. This time, there were more than two. At least 5 figures stepped into the room, their eyes sharp, their steps heavy. Liana stood tall, her presence filling the small space with authority. "You should not have come," she said, her voice steady. The men did not answer. It spread out, surrounding her and Ethan. Ethan's heart raced, but he gripped the heavy iron bar he had taken from the factory. His hands trembled, but he did not back down. The first man lunged, and Ethan swung the bar with all his strength. It connected, sending the man stumbling back. Another rushed at Liana, but she moved with speed and precision, striking him down with her bare hands. The fight was chaos, the sound of shouts and crashes filling the apartment. Ethan fought clumsily, but with raw determination. He blocked blows, pushed back attackers, and refused to fall. Every time he thought he was done, he looked at Liana and found more strength to keep going. One of the men grabbed Ethan from behind, but Ethan drove his elbow into the man's chest and twisted free. Another swung at him and he barely dodged, feeling the wind of the strike against his face. He countered with the iron bar, forcing the attacker to fall. Blood pounded in his ears, but he stayed on his feet. At last, only one man remained standing. He was taller, stronger than the rest, and his eyes burned with fury. He charged at Liana, but Ethan stepped in front of her without thinking. The man's fist struck Ethan in the chest, knocking the air from his lungs, but Ethan did not move aside. He raised the bar again, his vision blurred, and swung with everything he had left. The man dropped to the floor, unmoving. Silence filled the apartment. Ethan stood trembling, his chest rising and falling with each heavy breath. Liana placed her hand on his shoulder, steadying him. "You faced them all," she said softly. "You stood when no one else would." Ethan dropped the bar and leaned against the wall, exhausted. "I couldn't let them take you," he said. His voice was rough, but filled with truth. "Atch." Liana's eyes softened, and she stepped closer. "Shh. You gave me more than protection," she told him. "You gave me hope." They sat together in the quiet that followed. Outside, the city carried on as if nothing had happened. But inside that small apartment, everything had changed. Ethan was no longer just an engineer with a simple life. He was a man who had faced fear and refused to break. And Liana was no longer just a queen running from her enemies. She had found someone who would stand with her, not because of her crown, but because of who she was. When dawn came, Liana looked out at the light rising over the city. "I must return to my people," she said. "But I will not return alone. If you will walk beside me, we can face what is coming together." Ethan looked at her, tired but resolute. "I'll go with you," he said, "wherever it leads." Liana smiled, not with the smirk of the night she first appeared, but with the warmth of trust. And in that moment, Ethan knew his life had changed forever. The quiet world he once knew was gone, but in its place was something greater. Together, they would face whatever came next.